All right, let's get started. Okay, so today is going to be all about the abstract. We're going to learn what makes up what makes up the abstract, what goes into it. You're going to start and hopefully finish assignment number, I think it's 13. Assignment number 13, which is writing an abstract for a paper. Not your paper, but a paper that we're going to have you read. You're going to work in groups of 2 and 3. These are going to be your own current group members, but I'm going to break up some groups into groups of 2 and 3. That's going to be due by midnight tonight, but hopefully you should have enough time to, for the most part, get it done, hopefully in class. Before we jump into the abstract, I just want to bring up once again an overview of what goes in the intro methods. You're going to be getting back your method section tonight at some point. I finished grading them and giving feedback. But I just want to make sure that we go over the intro method real fast because your final paper is due relatively soon. It is due in 2 weeks, I believe. Yeah, in 2 weeks on April 22nd. So that's a date to be looking at and trying to budget your time accordingly. If you gave me a revised intro, I will also get that back to you tonight. Yeah, so I just want to make it very clear that what we're expecting out of your paper. I'm just going to cover the intro methods today, and then next week I'm going to cover the intro methods again, but also the results and discussion. All of this information and more detailed versions of this information can be found on the individual homework assignments. So homework assignment number 7 was the introduction, 8 was the methods, 12, I think it was, whatever the one was for the results and discussion that you're turning in, and then assignment number 14 for the abstract. But every single one of these assignments has a really, really good breakdown of what goes in each paragraph. And it's very critical that you look this over and you kind of use it as a checklist, you print it out maybe and use it as a checklist to check off and be like, okay, I have this, I have that, I have this. Because this is what your grade is going to be based on for your final paper. And now I commented on it on a bunch of papers. You'd be like, oh, hey, you need this, you need that, you're missing this. Please address that feedback. Please make sure you incorporate it. I want to show you an example of what I'm talking about. So here is just assignment number 12. So you turn this in today. Whenever you get feedback on it, and I hope to have that to you hopefully by next Wednesday, if not before. But one of the things that you really should be doing is going through each of these and being like, okay, do I have this? All right, do I have this? Do I have the findings in a meaningful English sentence? Oh, wait, I don't have that. Maybe I need to, not maybe, I need to include that. So go through each one of these assignments and make sure that you hit on all these points. Dr. Tenenholtz even does a really good job on like assignment number 7. And here, let me pull up assignment number 7. She even breaks down what goes in each paragraph. So the introductory paragraph, she breaks it down by sentence. So make sure that you have all of this information, because if you don't, you're going to receive a poor grade on your final paper. Yeah, I'm not going to go over the introduction. I have it written down. It's here. Use the assignment sheets to figure out more specifically what goes in the introduction. Also look at my feedback. Some things on the methods. So next week, or maybe I'll even put up an extra video where I describe a lot of the problems I saw in the methods. But essentially your methods should have these 4 things. It should have, talking about your participants. So, or it definitely needs these 4 things. You need to have a paragraph on your participants. A lot of you forgot to put in a certain demographic. So you just said like, here is how many participants we had, and maybe you covered age, but I know most of you, I think all but one group assessed things like ethnicity. So make sure you put the ethnicity breakdowns. Maybe some groups asked whether they're in college or not, and the breakdown of if they were in college, what year they're in. All that stuff should be here. Materials. The biggest thing I saw was, well, first, people didn't have clear descriptions of your IV. You should tell me what you're measuring, and then you need to break down and tell me about your 2 individual groups. If you're using a vignette, you don't need to copy and paste the vignette in the paragraph, just summarize it in 2 sentences. Summarize your vignette in 2 sentences. And then, refer to the appendix. A lot of you didn't have appendixes or appendices. You refer to the appendix where you just paste in the actual vignette. A lot of you didn't tell me how your dependent variable was coded and calculated. This can also go in data analysis, but you need to tell me with your dependent variable, it was measured on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is strongly disagree and 5 is strongly agree. Then talk about some sample questions. We assessed emotions on a 1 to 5 scale, strongly disagree to strongly agree. Sample questions include, I feel happy and I feel sad. A lot of you didn't have that for your dependent variable. Any other materials? Some groups had extra materials, that should be in here. And then once again, all of these should be in the appendix. I technically was supposed to take off points for stuff being missing, but I was very liberal with the grading. But make sure it's in your final paper. Even if I specifically did not comment on your paper that you're missing this, I might have just missed it myself. Make sure it's in your final paper. There's plenty of resources for you to figure out, potentially what you're missing. Like I said, use the assignment sheets as checklists. And you can check off, oh, I have this, I don't have that, I need that in my final paper. Design and procedure, I should be able to recreate your study. A majority of people did really well with this. And data analysis. A lot of people are getting mixed up with the descriptives. So, you'll say something along the lines of like, descriptive analyses were conducted and compared to something. You don't actually you don't compare anything with descriptives. Descriptives are literally just mean and standard deviations for the most part of your demographics. You occasionally do it for your dependent variable where you list off like, oh, the average was this, the average was that. But descriptives are means and standard deviations of frequencies. There's no analysis of like comparisons that go in with descriptives. It's purely just describing your data. What were the rates of males and females? What were the, age ranges? What was the mean and standard deviation of that? Excuse me. Also, some very nuanced things with how things are reported. I commented on a lot of people's papers, but I think I'm going to be doing maybe tomorrow or over the weekend. I'll put out a video of like, here are some common mistakes that I saw and here's how to fix them. It won't be too long, maybe a 10-minute video. I suggest you view that video and just see if you don't have any of those errors in your own paper. Once again, getting back your methods and your revised intros today, take a look at them. Any questions, come see me during office hours. All right, let's jump into the abstract. Can someone tell me what is the point of an abstract?
Does it like give like a brief overview of what you're researching and like your key findings?
Yeah, the point of the abstract is to summarize every aspect, every component of your paper into 150 to 200 words. You are just summarizing your research. And hopefully, writing an abstract, and we'll get into it, can be a little difficult, but hopefully the breakdown that we give, and I'm going to break down, or we're going to analyze an abstract, and then I'm going to present one of my own abstracts and really break it down for you. It's really not as bad as it seems. All right. The scientific abstract, what is it? Like we just said, it's a concise description of your study. It really should tell you what you did, why you did it, and what you found. The goal here is to sell your work. And I don't necessarily like the phrase sell your work, but the goal is to sell your work. You want to convince readers to keep going in your paper. As a researcher myself who writes a lot of papers, I love abstracts, and because an abstract is really an easy way for you as a reader to be like, do I want to continue reading one with the study? Is this going to be relevant to, my own paper that I'm writing? And reading an abstract should be able to tell you that in, under 2 minutes, however long it takes you to read, 250 words. So it's a really great way to just summarize your research. But it's challenging. The phrase here, economy of expression. A good abstract conveys a lot of information. Like I said, it summarizes your entire study in a small number of words. Whenever you submit to a journal, a lot of journals, well, almost every journal, limits you to, 250 words or under 150 words. So, you're going to have to learn, or this is a really great skill in learning how to write concisely. So the next 2 slides go into parts of an abstract. And I'm going to break this down. I'm going to like color code my own abstract to show you, but this is parts of an abstract. So first off, we need to have this, Dr. Tannenholz calls it motivation. I'm going to call it the introduction. But, we should talk about why we should care about the problem that you're studying. And hopefully you'll see, in the two abstracts coming up, how two different ways to do it. But essentially, you're just summarizing your introduction in about 2 sentences. You need to bring up basically, here's what prior research found, and here's why we're doing our study. But, and here is something that's interesting, you don't have to actually cite in here. So I'm going to show you an example of one that doesn't cite and one that does cite, so you can see two different styles of writing. But just so for your own reference, you don't have to actually cite when you're bringing up prior research here. But you're not bringing up individual studies. You're just summarizing what research has found. Anyways, the next sentence or two should be about question and hypothesis. So, what problem question are you trying to address? We're trying to see if music influences emotions. And then you provide your hypothesis. Specifically, we hypothesize that people in this condition are, X, Y, and Z, and you continue on with your hypothesis. Next, you should have 2 to 3 sentences on your method, 1 to 3 sentences on your method. We'll get down into the breakdown of sentences. It's different for every group and every person, depending on how you write. But just remember, you have to stay under 250 words. Or 200, I think it's 150 to 200. So I think it's under 200 words, but we'll get more into that. But the method, how did you investigate the problem? Basically, you're summarizing your basic methodology in simple, non-technical terms. Next sentence or two should be about your results. You briefly state the finding regarding your hypothesis. I know a lot of groups did additional analyses. You don't have to bring them up here in the abstract. You just bring up the result of your main hypothesis. And you're going to describe the result in words, no statistics. So this should sound really familiar, describing my results in words in plain English, not using numbers. This is what you do in the quote unquote plain English sentence in your results. You should all, summarize your result of whatever the t-test you're running in plain English with no numbers. Adapt it so that it can fit in here. Then you should have a sentence, or two talking about what are the implications of your finding, what is the main take-home point. And then every abstract will have a short list of keywords. Here I'm going to throw out some examples for your group or for your class, but things maybe such as emerging adults. If you limited your population to people like 18 to 30, if you limited that, emerging adults. If you didn't and you just 18 plus, you could do things like just adults. Maybe a keyword like emotions or music or I'm trying to think of the group, like not racism, but racial discrimination. So think of some keywords for your own study that could go in here, but we need about 3 to 5. And really the goal for the keyword is, so the abstract, you're summarizing your research in 200 words. Try to summarize the main gist of who you're studying and what you're studying in 5 words, right? In 5 keywords, and that's kind of what the keywords, how you can imagine what keywords are. All right, before we jump into breaking apart an abstract that's already written, does anyone have any questions about the content of an abstract? So the content of an abstract, if you look at it, we have introduction, hypothesis, method, results, conclusion. It's literally just taking your paper and summarizing each section to be under 200 words. That's really what you're doing. So if you can imagine condensing your entire paper into 200 words, that's what you're doing. Any questions about what goes into an abstract? Okay, so I'm going to read off this abstract, read along, but as I'm reading, I want you to think about, what makes this a good abstract? Does it cover all of these parts? And is there anything that you think you could improve upon, or not that you can improve, I don't want you to improve it, but do you think it's missing anything? Would you want anything to be added to this? So I'm going to go ahead and read it, follow along. But laptop computers are widely prevalent in university classrooms. Although laptops are a valuable tool, they offer access to a distracting temptation, the internet. In the study reported here, we assessed the relationship between classroom performance and actual internet usage for academic and non-academic purposes. Students who were enrolled in an introductory psychology course logged into a proxy server that monitored their online activity during class. Past research relied on self-report, but the current methodology objectively measured time, frequency, and browsing history of participants' internet usage. In addition, we assessed whether intelligence, motivation, and interest in course material could account for the relationship between internet use and performance. Our results showed that non-academic internet use was common among students who brought laptops to class and was inversely related to class performance. This relationship was upheld after we accounted for motivation, interest, and intelligence. Class-related internet use was not associated with a benefit to classroom performance. All right, so can someone tell me, let's start off with an easy one. Can someone tell me just what this study was about?
Whether or not like computers benefit like grades in class.
Yeah, so they were looking at, so, if I can imagine just trying to recreate their study, what they did is they looked at people who bring in laptops to a psych class, let's say Psych 101, and they monitored their internet usage while in class. And it looks like they broke it down by students who, students who use the internet for academic purposes and students who use the internet for non-academic purposes during class, and how that influenced class performance. They did some extra stuff where they looked at like potentially predictors or covariates. We don't care about that, but where is it here? They looked at motivation, interest, and intelligence, but for the most part, their main design of the study, looking at non-academic and academic use of internet and how that impacts class performance. What were their findings? There's two main findings. Skylar?
Non-academic internet use was common among students who brought laptops to class and was related to class performance. Class-related internet use was not associated with a benefit to classroom performance.
Yeah, so we have that non-academic use was inversely related to class performance. So more non-academic use was related to lower class performance. That's what they mean by inverse. You think about it as a correlation, it was a negative correlation. And then class-related internet use was not associated at all with benefits to classroom performance. So those are the two main findings. Is there anything, so thinking back to the parts, is there anything that they missed? Just gonna go back and forth. Is there anything that they really missed, or maybe they didn't do a good enough job talking about? Emma, you can just shout out.
Maybe the like take home point or the like what this means for like future things. I guess like just the take home point and conclusion.
Oh, it's good. They don't talk about it at all, actually. There's nothing in here talking about the take-home message or the relevance for their study. I mean, they kind of bring up the relevance up here. So I think they do a really good job of stating why should we care about this problem? You see, they really didn't go into too much background research, right? They were just like laptops are, widely prevalent, and the internet is distracting. They didn't bring up too much prior research, but they do a really good job at setting up. You can kind of infer the importance of it, right? You can infer that like, okay, we need to know if non-academic use is detrimental to performance because kids are doing it all the time while in class. How many of you, and you don't have to do a show of hands, have been looking at social media while I've been talking? I'm sure many people have. And so that's kind of what they're doing. But at the end, they don't sum it up and they just end with the results. So it would have been nice, if I was reviewing this, I would have said, hey, you need to have some kind, what are the implications of your findings? What does this mean? How does this impact classroom? How can people use this information? It would have been nice to have one sentence, I'm trying to come off it off the top of my head, but saying something along the lines of, this shows that maybe people need to do, or maybe universities need to do a better job at curbing non-academic use during class time. That's not something students want to hear, right? If they put restrictions on what you could see while you're in class, but that would potentially, increase grades. So yeah, it would have been nice to see that at the end. I was going to ask, what did they do a really good job with? I think they set up a really good job with setting up why we should care. Internet is really important. Laptops are really prevalent and it could impact grades. And that's important for universities, but they should have added a sentence at the very end to talk about the implications. All right, so I've kind of talked about this prior in the slides a couple before, but this is a really rough breakdown of how many sentences we're looking for. And then I'm going to show you my own, where I actually color coordinate things to show you the breakdown. But we should be looking at 3 to 5 sentences for the introduction. So a broad statement showing relevance, 1 to 3 sentences about background research. They didn't do this in the abstract that we just read. They kind of touched on it, but they didn't really do this. And then the purpose of your current study in 1 sentence, and then also your hypothesis. You should have 1 to 3 sentences for the methods. How did you do your study? If you go back up here, they kind of talk about it. They talk about, let me back out, but they talk about it right here, their methods. So right here, they talk about their methods, so we can see it's, like 3 sentences. And everyone's methods for each group are going to look different because you all did different studies. Then they have their results they kind of have it in 3 sentences, but your results really could fall under 1 or 2. And then they should have a summary sentence. So let me go back here. So 1 to 3 sentences for methods, and then 1 to 3 sentences for results. Summarize them in simple English, no numbers, just restating what I said before, and end with a take-home message. Let me show you one of my own. And I should mention that this Word document, so I kind of annotated this, this abstract that we just read. I annotated breaking down what each sentence is kind of talking about, so you can see the breakdown of an abstract. I also did it for my own. I didn't annotate it on the side, but I did color code it. So that way you can see what a different type of abstract looks like. Not a different type, a different example of an abstract. So this is my own abstract. And actually for this journal, what they wanted is like you to actually do an introduction. They wanted you to write the words methods, introduction, results, and conclusion. So it really does help break it down for you. You don't have to do that in your own. You can just delete this. But let me break down my own, and I can show you a different way to do an abstract. One that I use citations on here. So I'm just going to read it out again, but I'm going to break down the parts. So previous research suggests excessively valuing happiness is associated with greater depression and life satisfaction in adolescents, a citation for that, and adults. However, there is little information on factors that predict excessive valuing happiness. Because social media use may alter adolescents' perceptions of their own happiness, the purpose of the current study was to investigate the predictive role of social media addiction on how much adolescents value happiness. So you can see in all of green, I started with prior work. So this is my introduction. I'm summarizing the introduction of the paper that I wrote. And you can see it's 2 sentences. I summarized everything in 2 sentences. And I really do set up an argument for my study. I say, excessively valuing happiness, I should mention, is how much one values happiness. I think it's self-explanatory, but someone higher on this scale would be like, oh, I always got to be happy. I'm never satisfied with my own happiness. I want to keep on being happy. I want to be more happy. That's someone who excessively values happiness. But that is related to depression and less life satisfaction. So it's not good to be always worried about your happiness. And it predicts depression and it predicts other bad things. but there's nothing that predicts what causes people to excessively value happiness. There's not a lot of work on it. Actually, I think there's like no work on it at all. I think I was the first one to look at it. And I say, hey, social media may influence valuing happiness, right? You're always seeing people happy on Instagram. You know, you're seeing edited images. You know, everyone, or not everyone, but people love to filter or use filters and edit their stuff. And you're always seeing people that's happy, right? Most people post happy content. Anyways, I think that might alter how someone views happiness. Long story short. Anyways, I bring up the introduction in 2 sentences. I talk about the current study, right? The purpose of the current study was to do this in one, it's not even a full sentence, in 1 sentence. For your own research paper, abstract, also include an abstract, a hypothesis in here. So I would probably want to say something along the lines of, you know, we hypothesize, blah, 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 that, you know, adolescents who excessively value happiness or who are addicted to social media are more likely to excessively value happiness. So we'd want to see your hypothesis sentence right here. Anyways, let's continue. Let's go to the methods. Data were collected from this many adolescents, breakdown of age ranges, which you don't necessarily have to do if you don't want to. As you noticed, the other abstract did not do that. I did. And then I talked about a hierarchical multiple regression was used to examine the association between social media addiction at time 1 and valuing happiness at time 2. I gave you a sentence up here in this page. Remember, I uploaded this to eCampus. Here's a great sentence that you can adapt for your own. You know, utilizing a between subjects design, participants were randomized into 2 conditions where one group saw X and another group saw Y. This was done to compare the effects of X on Y. Now, some group, because they didn't do an independent samples t-test, maybe they did a dependent or a paired samples, you can alter the sentence. But here's a great 2 sentences that you could, you know, adapt for your own abstract. Anyways, let's move on. So I have the methods. Results indicated that social media addiction is a significant predictor of valuing happiness 7 months later. And that's the main portion of the results that we actually care about. So right there, the results of my entire study in 1 sentence. And my conclusion is a little bit wonky. I know I've been saying, like, give a strong take-home message. I kind of just hype up my own study. I say this study contributes to the limited research of valuing happiness and is the first to examine how social media may contribute to valuing happiness. I don't expect yours to look like that. You know, potentially say, have more of the relevance of your own study in that last section. And then you can see my keywords. You know, I have my dependent variable, valuing happiness. I have social media addiction in adolescents. So there's some example keywords. You know, try to think how they relate to your own study. Anyways, I have this, I think it's called like Jeff's breakdown in the assignment 13 folder. I hope this is useful in showing you, you know, different ways or, you know, what an abstract looks like broken down. 2 to 3 sentences on the introduction, you know, have a hypothesis sentence, 2 sentences on your methods, 1 sentence, 2 sentences max on your results, and a take-home message. Are there any questions about what goes into an abstract or anything that I showed you in regards to the 2 abstracts? Any questions at all about what goes into it? I know I'm going over this relatively fast, but it's essentially you've already done all the work. It's now just summarizing that work. Skylar, I know your hand has been up for a while. I'm assuming that you don't have a question and it's just left over from something previous.
Yeah, sorry.
That's fine. All right, I'm not seeing any questions about that. Here are some other considerations to take into when writing an abstract. Length varies by journal. For your paper and for this homework assignment, 13, keep it to 150 to 200 words. Don't go over it, don't go under it, points will be taken off. Consider your audience. I don't think this is a big problem for anyone, but like avoid jargon and assume that your reader has a general understanding of psychology, but not an expert on your topic. No group is doing anything where I would think that you need to explain more. You know, but potentially if you were doing a study on heart rate variability or the time between beats, you know, whenever your heart beats, which is a measure of a lot of stuff, but also like emotions. You know, maybe you'd want to explain what HRV is, but I don't think any group is doing anything that extreme where you would need to explain anything in your abstract. and then write the abstract last, which is what we're doing, because like I mentioned multiple times, the abstract, you've already done all the work. You've written your introduction, methods, results, and discussion. Just summarize that all now. All right, so assignment number 13, it's an in-class assignment. You're gonna have now until the rest of the class to work on it. So you have 45 minutes to work on it in pairs. What you're gonna need to do is download and read the research article in the assignment 13 folder. And then what you're gonna do is write an abstract for that paper. Be sure to include all the parts that I've been talking about in the abstract. 150 to 200 words. Use the word count feature in Word. If you don't know how to do that, look it up. I think it just tells you at the bottom left, honestly. Okay, so since you're working in pairs or groups of 3, make sure all of your names are in the assignment, and you only need to submit it into the assignment 13 folder for only one member of the group, but make sure all your names are on it. Tip, don't get bogged down on the details. Hopefully you'll see, I could give you my paper that I wrote my abstract on, but hopefully you really see that, my introduction was like 2 pages long in my actual paper, but because I was writing a brief report, but you see, it was in 2 sentences in the abstract, so really don't get bogged down in the details. Focus on the big picture of the introduction and summarize it. It's worth a total of 8 points. Make sure your name's on it. Otherwise, it's an automatic -2 for everyone. Key point here. So this is an actual real research paper. I know that you could easily just find this research paper on EBSCOhost or Google and copy and edit the actual real abstract for this paper. Don't do it. We will know that you did it, and it's automatically, everyone in that group will get written up for plagiarism. Dr. Zandholz wanted me to make it very clear that she, especially for this assignment, because we know it already exists out there, has absolutely 0 tolerance on this, and she will 100% hand out plagiarism or do plagiarism reports for people who just try to edit the original abstract. So don't even look at it. Don't even look up the research paper. Just download it and write your own abstract from it. Any questions about assignment number 13? All right, I'll put you into breakout rooms right after this. But assignment number 14 will be due next Thursday. And there's obviously more details on the assignment sheet, but what you're going to be doing is writing an abstract for your own paper. This is an individual effort, so this is not group work, so make sure you're not collaborating with others in your group on this. 3 to 5 keywords, 150 to 200 words, more instructions on the actual assignment itself, and that will be due next week. And just as a reminder, the final paper is due on the 22nd, so 2 Thursdays from now. Please, please, please come to my office hours if you have any questions about anything. I sound like a broken record, but please come see me, because when it comes to grading your final paper, everyone has, there's going to be no leniency. It's just, you should have come to me if you had questions. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open up breakout rooms.